He had everything: money, power, status, and the woman he believed to be the love of his life. But in a single night, everything he had built up crumbled before his eyes. Imagine planning the perfect moment, a grand gesture to surprise the one you love, only to discover that this person was already living a lie by your side. Mark was not only betrayed, he was exposed, ridiculed, and dismissed as if he had never meant anything. But what no one expected was that at the moment he lost himself the most, a completely unexpected woman would appear to change everything. Betrayal can destroy a man, but can it also rebuild him? What happens when someone who never imagined he needed saving meets the one person who can show him that there is still something worth fighting for? Get ready for a story of pain, new beginnings, and a fate that no one could have predicted. Mark's heart was racing as he clutched the leather envelope containing the tickets for the trip he had been planning for months. He had spent the last few weeks organizing everything: reservations at the best hotels, exclusive dinners, unforgettable excursions. This would be the perfect way to show Carla that he was ready to take another step by her side. The clock chimed 10:47 p.m. when he arrived at the party. The room was illuminated by golden lights, and the ambient sound was a mixture of laughter and the clinking of glasses. Mark spotted a few acquaintances, waved discreetly, and started looking for Carla. He imagined her surprise at seeing him there, as he had said he was stuck in an important meeting. He made his way across the dance floor and up the stairs towards the top floor, where he knew she usually stayed at the more reserved parties. It was then that he heard a familiar laugh. He stopped instinctively when he heard a male voice respond in a low, intimate tone. Her heart squeezed. He approached slowly, his gaze fixed on the ajar door of one of the rooms. "No one need know. He would never suspect," said Carla, laughing. Mark's stomach churned. He pushed hard on the door, and the scene before his eyes hit him like a punch. Carla was sitting on the bed, her arms around the neck of her partner, Daniel, as the two exchanged complicit smiles. The silence that followed was deafening. Carla's eyes widened when she saw him standing there, the ticket still clutched in his hand. Daniel moved away quickly, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "Mark!" Carla stood up, straightening her dress, trying to keep her composure. "It's not what it looks like." He laughed, a bitter sound without any humor. "It's not what it looks like." His voice was cold, distant. He raised the tickets in the air. "I spent weeks planning a trip for us. To surprise you." Carla looked at the tickets, and her expression changed to something between guilt and irritation. I can explain." Mark took a step forward, his jaw clenched. "Explain? You just said that I would never suspect, that nobody needs to know." Silence fell over the room again. Outside, a few people began to notice the tension and approached. Daniel sniffed, trying to regain his posture. "Mark, man, you don't have to make a scene." Mark turned slowly towards him, his gaze full of fury. "Scene! You've destroyed everything we've built. You who I trusted like a brother." Carla crossed her arms, her expression becoming defensive. "Oh, please, Mark. You've always been more focused on business than on me. Do you think love is all about gifts and trips?" The final stab. Mark felt the words like blades tearing through his skin. He opened his hand, letting the notes fall to the floor, and took a deep breath. His heart wanted to scream, but he refused to give her that pleasure. He looked around and noticed the curious stares of the guests. He felt the weight of his humiliation and decided that he wouldn't stay there for another second. Turning, he left the room without looking back. His world had just fallen apart. Mark drove aimlessly, his knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel. The city passed by like a blur of lights as he tried to process everything. His mind mercilessly replayed the scene in the bedroom, Carla's laughter, the poisonous words she had said. The phone vibrated non-stop on the console. Calls from familiar numbers, messages piling up. He ignored them all. He didn't want to hear excuses, justifications, or advice. He wanted silence. He wanted to erase everything that had happened that night from his memory. After a sharp turn, he braked suddenly when he realized he was in front of his mansion. The gate opened automatically, and he drove in without thinking. He parked the car anyway, slammed the door, and walked inside. The place seemed colder and emptier than ever. He threw his keys on the table and loosened his tie, breathing hard. Everything there reminded him of Carla. The glasses they used to toast on special nights were still on the counter. Her perfume permeated the sofa cushions. He sank into the upholstery, closing his eyes. His head throbbed, his chest ached. The phone vibrated again. Without looking, he picked it up and put it on speaker. "Mark, man, pick up!" The voice of Andre, his longtime friend, sounded worried. "If it's about her, I'm not interested. I saw everything. Everyone saw it. Are you all right?" Mark let out a humorless laugh. "Do you think so?" Andre was silent for a few seconds before continuing. "Come here. You can't be alone right now." "No, I just need time." He hung up before his friend could insist. He threw his cell phone away, dropping it on the carpet. He ran his hands over his face, feeling the exhaustion weighing him down. He closed his eyes, but every time he did, he saw Carla in Daniel's arms. Sleep would not come that night. The hours passed, and dawn began to tint the sky orange. Mark was still awake, sitting in the same position on the sofa. He got up, his muscles stiff, and walked over to the drinks table. He picked up a bottle of whiskey and poured a generous shot into the glass. The golden liquid glistened in the dim light of the lamp. He drank it in one gulp, feeling the heat burn down his throat. He took the bottle and went out into the garden, taking a seat on one of the sun lounges. His cell phone vibrated again. This time he looked at the screen. "Carla. Mark, we need to talk. I can explain." Hatred surged like fire through his veins. He threw the phone away and took another sip of his drink. The betrayal hurt. But it hurt even more to know that he had allowed himself to be deceived for so long. He looked at the bottle in his hand and, on an impulse, stood up. He couldn't stay there any longer. He had to get out. He got into his car, sped off, and got lost in the city streets, driving aimlessly, the images of the night before replayed in his head. The traffic light turned red, but he didn't notice. A blaring horn woke him up. He slammed on the brakes and the car skidded to a halt. That's when he saw the silhouette of a woman standing in the street. His heart raced. She didn't move, she didn't scream, she didn't flinch. She just stood there, staring at him with a look that said more than words. Mark took a deep breath. Something inside him told him that this encounter was no accident. Mark's heart was still pounding in his chest as he stared at the woman in front of him. The car had stopped centimeters away from her, but she hadn't even moved. The street was empty, and the silence between them was almost palpable. Mark got out of the car, feeling his legs shaking, a mixture of adrenaline and alcohol coursing through his body. "Are you crazy?" he shouted, his voice full of frustration and disorientation. "I could have died." The woman arched an eyebrow, crossing her arms. "What about you? You're drunk driving at this hour. Who of us is closer to death?" Mark opened his mouth to retort, but stopped himself. He hadn't expected that answer. She looked at him for a moment before sighing. "You shouldn't be driving." He ran his hands through his hair, trying to find something to say, but all he managed to let out was an exasperated sigh. "Look, it's been a tough day. I could tell." The woman took a step back and looked around. "Now what? Are you going to keep killing yourself, or do you want to do something more productive?" Mark frowned. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Sit down, breathe, let the drunkenness wear off." He let out a bitter laugh. "Do you always offer help to strangers who almost run you over?" The woman smiled sideways. "Only to those who seem lost." Mark hesitated. Something about her was different. She didn't seem scared or angry. She didn't ask if he was Mark, the millionaire, the betrayed one from the night before. She just looked at him as if she was trying to see something beyond the surface. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lara." She looked at his car, then back at him. "And yours?" He blinked, surprised. "You don't know?" She shrugged. "Should I?" Mark laughed lightly. For the first time in hours, he felt a brief relief from the crushing weight he was carrying. "Mark!" Lara nodded, as if processing the information. "Right, Mark. Now decide, are you going to continue this horrible night, or do you want an alternative?" He watched her for a moment, trying to understand what the hell was going on, but something in her voice was inviting. "What alternative?" She pointed across the street, where there was a small 24-hour cafe. "A cafe?" Mark arched an eyebrow. "You want me sober? I want to see you make a less stupid choice than driving drunk." He snorted but cracked a small smile. "Okay, coffee." They crossed the street in silence. The cafe was almost empty, except for a bored waiter and a couple at a distant table. Lara sat down and waited while he did the same. "So, Mark." She propped her elbows on the table, her dark eyes fixed on him. "What happened?" He let out a slow breath, not knowing where to start. "A betrayal." Lara didn't look surprised or shocked. She just nodded. "Did it hurt?" He laughed, but without humor, as if they'd ripped a piece out of me. She didn't answer straight away. She just watched his expressions, as if trying to read beyond the words. "It's good." Mark blinked, surprised. "What's good?" "That it hurts. It means that you cared, that it was real for you." He frowned. "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" Lara gave a small smile. "Not right now, but one day it will." Mark was silent, staring at his coffee cup. For the first time that night, he felt that someone was really watching him. And strangely, that scared him less than it should have. The coffee slowly cooled in Mark's cup as he stared at Lara across the table. She was different. She didn't show pity or try to minimize his feelings. She just listened, without haste, without judgment. "Do you always give philosophical lessons to strangers at dawn?" he asked, trying to break the silence that had settled between them. Lara shrugged, swirling her spoon around in her cup. "Only to those who need to hear it." Mark let out a short laugh. "And how did you know I needed it? It's in your face. The look on your face says it all. You've been broken, but you still don't know what to do with the pieces." Mark leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "What about you? Have you ever been broken before?" Her smile diminished a little. For a moment, Lara looked down at her coffee. "I have." Mark realized that he had touched something sensitive, but instead of backing away, he felt the need to ask more. "How did you survive?" She let out a sigh. "By learning that not everything can be saved, not everything is worth rebuilding." Mark remained silent, absorbing those words. He thought of Carla, of the company, of his entire carefully planned life. Everything he had believed to be solid now seemed fragile and purposeless. "Do you think I should leave everything behind?" he asked in a lower tone. Lara studied his face before answering. "I think you should understand what is still worth carrying." He looked down at the table. For the first time since everything fell apart, he felt there was another way out of the pain. The sun was already rising over the horizon when they left the cafe. Mark threw some notes on the table and followed Lara out. The fresh morning air hit his face, dispelling some of the numbness from the night before. "So, Mark, what now?" Lara asked, crossing her arms. He looked around, feeling a strange lightness in his chest. "Now I have no idea." Lara smiled, as if she already knew that answer. "Good. That means you have options." Mark laughed quietly. "Do you always talk like that? Like you're in an old movie full of metaphors?" Lara tilted her head thoughtfully. "Maybe. Or maybe I've just learned that the right answers aren't straightforward." He shook his head, still trying to decipher it. "And what do you do for a living, Lara? Apart from teaching random drunks to reflect on their mistakes." She smiled sideways. "Alive. Isn't that enough?" Mark arched an eyebrow. "You're a mystery." Lara sighed, putting her hands in the pockets of her jacket. "Mark, I'm not a mystery. I'm just someone who's learned to survive. And maybe that's what you need right now." He frowned, puzzled. "And what does that mean?" She took a step back, ready to go her own way. "It means that if you want to learn how to survive the fall, I can show you how." Mark stood there, watching her walk away. He wasn't sure what it meant, but one thing was certain. Lara wasn't someone who appeared in people's lives by chance, and for some reason he didn't want to let her go. Mark couldn't get Lara out of his mind. Something about her intrigued him in a way he couldn't explain. She hadn't been kind or charitable. She hadn't tried to console him with empty words or clichés about overcoming. Instead, she had thrown naked truths in front of him, and strangely, that brought him more clarity than any advice he had received so far. 2 days had passed since that early morning, and now he was back in his office, trying to get back to his routine. But everything seemed different. Carla and Daniel's betrayal still echoed in his mind, but not in the same way. It was as if he was now seeing everything from a new angle. His secretary came in, holding a tablet. "Mark, your partner wants to speak to you." He looked up, his jaw muscles locking. "Daniel?" She hesitated. "Yes, he's in the meeting room. He says it's important." Mark took a deep breath and stood up. His footsteps echoed down the corridor as he walked to the glassed-in room. When he opened the door, he found Daniel sitting at the table, nervously fixing the cufflinks on his shirt. "Mark, I'm glad you came," he said, trying to smile. Mark crossed his arms and leaned against the wall. "Don't be so relieved. Just say what you want." Daniel sighed. "I know you hate me now, but we need to talk." Mark laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Do you think we can just sit down and talk after what you've done?" Daniel looked around, making sure they were alone. "Carla came to see me. She wants to talk to you." Her name made Mark's blood boil, but he remained impassive. "And why should I care?" Daniel ran a hand through his hair, restless. "Because she said she made a mistake, that she regrets it." Mark narrowed his eyes. "And you came here as her spokesperson, or as a partner who wants to prevent me from making decisions that harm her business?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. Then he leaned forward and said in a lower tone, "I know I made a mistake, but you have to understand. Carla never really loved you. She always wanted something you couldn't give her." Mark felt his anger rising. "And you could?" Daniel hesitated. I don't know. All I know is that she said she needed to talk to you." Mark took a deep breath and moved away from the wall. "Tell her that some betrayals can't be fixed." He left the room before Daniel could reply. In the evening, Mark went to the same cafe where he had met Lara. He didn't know exactly why he was there, but something inside him told him that she could help him see the answer he needed. And as if she had seen him coming, Lara was already sitting at a table in the corner, watching the street through the window. He approached her slowly. "Do you always stay here?" he asked, pulling out a chair and sitting down without waiting for an invitation. Lara smiled sideways. "Maybe I waited for you to come back." Mark arched an eyebrow. "Oh, really?" She laughed softly. "Not exactly, but you seemed like someone who would still have questions." He rubbed his hands on the table, thinking about what he wanted to say. "Carla wants to see me." Lara showed no surprise. "And you want to see her?" He opened his mouth to answer, but stopped. I don't know." Lara tilted her head, studying him. "So that's your answer?" Mark frowned. "What do you mean? If you really wanted to see her, you'd have gone by now. If you're here, it's because you know it's not worth it." He remained silent, absorbing those words. Then a small smile escaped his lips. "You have an annoying way of being right." Lara smiled. "I know." And for the first time in a long time, Mark felt that he was finally on the right track. Mark thought that everything was starting to fall into place, but it didn't take him long to realize that there were still loose parts to his story. And one of them decided to show up uninvited. The following afternoon, he was in his office when his secretary walked in with a tense look on her face. "Mr. Mark, Carla is here." He looked up, feeling his body stiffen. "She's here." "Yes, and she's not leaving." Mark took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment. He had already decided that he didn't want to hear any more from her, but perhaps it was time to put an end to it once and for all. Send her in. The secretary hesitated before nodding and leaving. A few seconds later, the door opened again, and Carla walked in, wearing a flawless dress, the perfect makeup, and the same perfume he had once loved to smell on her skin. "Mark," she began, her voice soft, almost hesitant. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Just say it, Carla." She bit her lip, feigning nervousness, and moved closer. "I made a mistake. A big mistake." Mark let out a dry laugh. "Which one?" She lowered her eyes for a moment, then looked at him with an expression that seemed genuine. "I got carried away. I got lost in what I thought I wanted, and forgot what really mattered." He kept his gaze fixed on her, analyzing every word. "And now you've discovered that I was what really mattered." Carla moved closer, touching the table. "I know it's hard to believe, but I'm sorry. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but let me at least try to make things right." Mark felt a silent anger rise up inside him. Before, those words might have made him hesitate, but now something was different. He no longer felt the same overwhelming pain. He leaned forward, looking directly into her eyes. "Are you sorry, Carla? Or are you only sorry because you thought I'd be destroyed, and moving on without you was harder than you thought?" She blinked, surprised. "It's not that. You destroyed everything we had." His voice came out firm but calm. "And the worst thing of all, you didn't even try to hide it. You wanted me to find out." Carla opened her mouth to reply, but nothing came out. Mark continued, "You never loved me. You only loved what I could give you. But now I see, and you're not part of it anymore." She took a step back, her breathing slightly quickened. "Mark, He stood up, picked up his cell phone and quickly typed a message. Seconds later, his secretary appeared at the door. "The conversation is over. My assistant will escort you out." Carla's eyes filled with fury. "Are you going to tree?"